Recently, I've been thinking more about tabletop role-playing games, especially some of the earlier ones from the 80s and thereabouts. A lot of the modern tabletop role-playing games are good games. There's a lot of them now, which is good. I'm glad that the industry seems to be thriving again. But a lot of the modern ones are very slick, very streamlined, which is good from the perspective that they're easier to learn, and once you've learned sort of the basic set of rules, they're easier to implement because you can apply that same set of rules to just about every situation in the game to help keep the game moving, which is great. But one of the things about the older role-playing games is they're quirkier, and because of that, they tend to have more personality. And some of those games from that era are really classic games, like, for instance, Rollmaster or the Middle-earth role-playing game. They have a lot of personality. I don't think there'd be nearly as many people interested in playing them now because of how, not streamlined they are. But they have a lot of personality. A lot of unique things about them, a unique feel to them. And that applies to a lot of games from that era. And recently, I was looking at some of the newer role-playing games, thinking about picking up another one. And I was looking at Dungeon Crawl Classics, which it is a name, but it's basically a reimagining of D&D from, I think, the late 70s, where it's not just a reimagining of advanced Dungeons & Dragons, it's a reimagining of the original Dungeons & Dragons with some of the appendix material that was later released for it before Advanced Dungeons & Dragons came out. I think that's the way it works. It looks like a really interesting game. It has interesting artwork. It has plenty of supplements and materials published for it. It seems to have a fair number of people playing it, a fair fan base. My only concern is that one of the unique things about it is that it uses funky dice. It doesn't use the standard set of role-playing dice. It uses sort of a different set of role-playing dice. And that costs about $9 to buy a new set of those dice. But by the same token, that would add to the unique feel of the game that you're using completely unusual dice. So that's just one system I've been thinking about picking up. And these days, with so many people staying at home, and on top of that, people just being busy in general, and it being difficult to find time for everyone to get together at one location, even if people weren't trying to stay at home extra right now. And with everyone just being busy and living sometimes scattered out a bit, one person lives here and one person lives there, and so everyone has to drive quite a ways to get to one central location. That really brings up the topic of these virtual tabletop online programs like Virtual Tabletop, which allows you to get together with your friends and I guess maybe even people you don't know yet to play these tabletop games online together using online voice chat and being able to share a tabletop online virtually where you can have your maps and your game pieces and all of that. And it can be an interesting way to play these tabletop games, actually having to set aside time and space for everyone to drive out wherever to whoever's and get together and play the games. So thankfully, even with everyone having to stay home right now and everyone being so busy, there are still ways you can play traditional tabletop role-playing games together. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to record it and turn it into a podcast, doing the game through voice chat would make all of that easier. Have you been thinking much about role-playing games lately, or have you been playing anything? Certainly let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear about that.